Reactions of violent killers to life or death sentences. Courtrooms are supposed to be quiet, controlled places, but when heartless killers finally hear their fate, that control often shatters in ways no one expects. Get ready, because this countdown grows darker, the reactions grow colder, and by the time you reach the top, the final case may leave you speechless. Number 10. James Craig. On the 30th of July 2025, the Arapahoe County courtroom in Colorado was heavy with grief, confusion, and quiet rage, as dentist James Craig stood before the judge for sentencing. He had been convicted of murdering his wife, Angela Craig, by poisoning her protein shakes in 2023. What initially looked like a sudden illness slowly unraveled into a carefully planned betrayal that shocked everyone who thought they knew him. Craig lived a double life. On the surface, he was a respected dentist and a father of 6. Behind closed doors, he was having an affair, searching online for poisons, and planning a way out of his marriage. The trial revealed disturbing details, including attempts to manipulate others even after his arrest. When the guilty verdicts were read, Craig barely reacted, showing little emotion as his future collapsed. That changed during victim impact statements. Angela's family spoke about a daughter and sister who trusted the wrong person. Her mother cried about grandchildren who would grow up without their mother. Then Craig's own children spoke. His oldest son struggled to hold himself together as he described the complete destruction of their family. It was at that moment, and not before, that Craig finally broke down in tears. The judge was unmoved. She described Craig's actions as a wave of destruction that spared no one, especially his children. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus additional years for other charges. In Colorado, that means exactly what it sounds like. He will never walk free. As of 2026, Craig remains in prison, appealing but with little hope. The tears may have looked real to some, but for many watching, they came far too late. Number 9. Donna Adelson. When Donna Adelson entered the Leon County courtroom on the 13th of October 2025, the tension was almost visible. At 74 years old, she was about to be sentenced for orchestrating the murder of her former son-in-law, Dan Markel, a respected Florida State University law professor who was shot dead in his garage back in 2014. The case had dragged on for over a decade, filled with wiretaps, secret payments, and family betrayal. Prosecutors proved that Adelson worked closely with her son Charlie to arrange the murder, driven by a bitter custody battle over her grandchildren. The jury didn't hesitate. Guilty on all counts: murder, conspiracy, solicitation. When it came time for victim statements, Markel's family spoke calmly but firmly, describing a man taken for no reason other than control and pride. Then Donna Adelson spoke, and the mood shifted. Instead of remorse, she launched into a long, defiant speech, insisting she was innocent and claiming the evidence meant nothing. She painted herself as the true victim, someone unfairly targeted. The judge interrupted her more than once, warning her about her tone and openly noting her complete lack of accountability. No one clapped. No one gasped. The silence said enough. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole, plus additional decades for the remaining charges. As of 2026, she remains behind bars, appeals failing one after another. The irony is painful. In trying to control her grandchildren's lives, she ensured she would never see them again. Her final performance was not one of sorrow, but of pride, and it sealed her legacy as someone who chose power over family and lost everything. Number 8. T.J. Lane. On the 19th of March 2013, the courtroom in Geauga County, Ohio, witnessed one of the most disturbing sentencing moments in modern American crime history. T.J. Lane, just 18 years old, stood before the judge for the Chardon High School shooting that killed 3 students and wounded 3 others in February 2012. He was only 17 at the time of the attack, which spared him from the death penalty, but not from life behind bars. As families shared their grief, anger filled the room. Parents spoke about sons who never came home, futures erased in seconds. Lane, meanwhile, smirked, showing no visible remorse. Then, against his lawyer's advice, he stood up to speak. What followed stunned everyone. Lane deliberately tried to provoke the families and the court, making offensive remarks meant to shock and hurt rather than explain. His behavior caused gasps throughout the room. The judge quickly shut him down and sentenced him to 3 life sentences without parole. Lane was removed, and the courtroom exhaled. Appeals later failed, and as of 2026, he remains in Ohio's super maximum security prison. His attempt to appear powerful only ensured he would be remembered not as feared, but as a tragic example of wasted youth and permanent consequences. In the end, his outburst did not define strength. Number 7. Bryan Kohberger. On the 23rd of July 2025, the Ada County Courtroom in Boise felt less like a legal space and more like an emotional pressure chamber ready to explode. This was the day Bryan Kohberger was sentenced for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students, a crime that had haunted the country since the 13th of November 2022. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin were young, full of plans, and brutally taken inside their off-campus home. The case had dragged on for years, and this was the moment families had been waiting for. Kohberger, once a criminology graduate student, sat in his orange jumpsuit with a stiff posture and an empty stare. While the families poured out their pain, he barely blinked. Sisters, parents, and loved ones spoke through tears and anger, calling him a coward, a monster, and someone undeserving of mercy. One emotional moment stood out when Kaylee's sister finished her statement and was hugged by her father as the courtroom broke into applause, something rarely allowed but impossible to stop. It felt like a collective release of years of grief. Then came Kohberger's turn to speak. The room went quiet. Cameras leaned in. After everything that had been said, he simply muttered, "I respectfully decline." That was it. No apology. No explanation. No emotion. Even a small black heart drawing found near him raised questions, though prosecutors later said it meant nothing they could prove. The judge wasted no time. Kohberger received 4 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus additional time, calling the crimes acts of unimaginable evil. As of 2026, he remains locked away in maximum security. In the end, the irony is hard to miss. A man who studied crime for years became one of the coldest examples of it, leaving behind a case that will be discussed for decades, and families whose pain will never fully fade. Number 6. Joseph McAlpin. When Joseph McAlpin walked into a Cleveland courtroom in 2019, he did not look like a man haunted by what he had done. He looked calm, focused, and disturbingly confident. That composure only made the details of his crimes harder to process. 2 years earlier, on the 14th of April 2017, McAlpin and his accomplices targeted Mr. Carr's dealership in Cuyahoga County, not for survival, but for greed. What followed was ruthless and unforgettable. McAlpin shot dealership owner Michael Kuznick twice in the head. Then he shot employee Trina Tomola, killing her as well. As if murdering 2 hard-working people was not enough, he also killed their dog, Axel. The couple's son later discovered the bodies. No parent, no child, no family ever truly recovers from something like that. What shocked the courtroom even more was McAlpin's decision to represent himself. Instead of remorse, he turned the trial into a spectacle, clashing with standby lawyers and awkwardly offering condolences while cross-examining the victim's son. It was tone-deaf, painful, and deeply unsettling. The jury did not take long to decide, guilty on all counts. When it came time for sentencing, the jury deliberated for just 30 minutes before recommending death. On the 21st of May 2019, Judge Brian Corrigan imposed a death sentence plus 63 additional years. McAlpin showed no visible reaction. Some witnesses even noted how casually he behaved, as if this were just another day. Appeals failed. In 2022, the Ohio Supreme Court unanimously upheld his sentence. Like others on death row, McAlpin remains alive due to the state's execution pause, but his fate is sealed. He thought playing lawyer would save him. Instead, it exposed his arrogance and emptiness. Number 5. Stefan Sterns. On the 21st of July 2025, the Osceola County courtroom was filled with quiet anger as Stefan Sterns stood to be sentenced for crimes that stunned even seasoned investigators. He had abused and murdered 3-year-old Madeline Soto, the daughter of his girlfriend, after years of exploitation that only came to light once it was too late. The evidence was overwhelming. Investigators found extensive digital proof on Sterns's phone, leaving no doubt about the long-term abuse. When Madeline resisted, prosecutors said Sterns killed her and attempted to hide what he had done. He later pleaded guilty to dozens of charges, including first-degree murder, avoiding a trial, but not the consequences. Madeline's father spoke through tears, describing birthdays that would never come and a future erased. Many noticed one absence. Madeline's mother did not appear in court, offering no statement, which quietly fueled public anger and unanswered questions. When Sterns was finally asked to speak, he offered a short, flat apology. No explanation, no emotion, just 2 words that felt empty against years of harm. The judge responded with clarity, sentencing him to multiple life terms without parole. Sterns will never leave prison. Number 4. Ashford Thompson. In July 2008, what should have been a forgettable traffic stop in Twinsburg, Ohio, turned into one of the most senseless police murders the state had seen in years. Officer Joshua Mictarian pulled over 5-year-old Ashford Thompson for something almost laughably minor: loud music. That was it. No chase, no violence, just noise. But within minutes, Officer Mictarian was dead, shot repeatedly at point-blank range, and a young man's weak excuses would never come close to explaining the brutality that followed. Thompson had been drinking and had reportedly been ranting earlier about demons and paranoia, but nothing justified what happened next. As Officer Mictarian calmly handcuffed one of Thompson's wrists, Thompson pulled out a gun and fired 4 shots directly into the officer's head. Then, as if that wasn't enough, he leaned in and fired 3 more shots. It was not panic, it was not fear, it was execution. At trial in Summit County, Thompson tried to sell the idea of self-defense, claiming he felt threatened. The jury was not buying it. The evidence was overwhelming, the brutality undeniable, and the motive non-existent. This was murder in its purest form. When victim impact statements were read, the courtroom filled with grief, anger, and disbelief. Thompson, meanwhile, stayed calm, even apologetic at moments, saying he was not raised to be cold-blooded. The irony of that statement was not lost on anyone. The jury recommended death, and the judge agreed. Appeals dragged on for years, including arguments about mental health, and in 2014, the Ohio Supreme Court upheld the sentence by a narrow 4-3 vote. A new mental health evaluation was ordered in 2023, but Ohio's execution moratorium means Thompson remains on death row as of 2026. A police officer lost his life over loud music. That reality still feels unreal. Justice may be slow, but at least Thompson will never walk free again. And it leaves one haunting question behind. How did something so small explode into something so final? Number 3. Chad Daybell. On the 1st of June 2024, the Ada County courtroom fell silent as Chad Daybell learned his fate. Convicted of murdering his wife Tammy Daybell and conspiring to kill Lori Vallow's 2 children, Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, Daybell stood motionless as the jury recommended the death penalty. The crimes were tied to extreme religious beliefs, secret prophecies, and a warped obsession with the end of the world. The trial revealed how the children's bodies were buried in Daybell's backyard and how Tammy's death was staged as natural. Witnesses described bizarre beliefs about dark spirits and rankings of human souls. Throughout it all, Daybell showed almost no emotion. During sentencing, family members spoke about stolen lives and unanswered prayers. Outside the courtroom, people waited anxiously. Inside, Daybell said nothing. The judge formally imposed the death sentence, calling the crimes senseless and deeply cruel. Number 2. Granville Ritchie. The Hillsborough County courtroom in Florida was heavy with grief on the 11th of September 2020, as Granville Ritchie was sentenced for one of the most horrifying crimes imaginable. In May 2014, Ritchie was left alone with 9-year-old Felicia Williams for just a short time. That brief moment ended her life and shattered an entire family forever. Ritchie raped the child, strangled her, and hid her body inside a suitcase. He then threw it off the Howard Franklin Bridge, hoping the water would erase what he had done. It did not. Days later, Felicia's remains were found, and the truth came out piece by piece, each detail worse than the last. The trial in 2019 was emotionally devastating. The evidence showed prolonged suffering and deliberate cruelty. The jury unanimously convicted Ritchie and recommended the death penalty without hesitation. By the time sentencing arrived, Felicia's family had waited over 6 years for this moment. Her mother dressed in black, saying she was there to bury the man who destroyed her child. Her grandmother spoke about a future stolen. Her sister described how Felicia had been treated as something disposable. Even the judge struggled to maintain composure while describing the torture the child endured. And yet, the most unexpected moment came from Felicia's father. He looked at Ritchie and said he forgave him, urging him to get right with God. It was an act of grace that stunned the room. Ritchie showed nothing, no tears, no reaction, no remorse. His sentence was upheld in 2022, and despite Florida carrying out executions in recent years, he remains on death row as of 2026. The cruelty of the crime still defies understanding, but the father's forgiveness stands as a reminder that humanity can exist even in the darkest moments, and it leaves a question that lingers long after the gavel falls. How can someone show no emotion after destroying so much? Number 1. Mikuel Brady. On the 12th of October 2017, Pasquotank Correctional Institution in North Carolina became the scene of the deadliest prison attack in the state's history. What started as a planned escape attempt ended with 4 correctional staff members brutally murdered, and at the center of it all was Mikuel Brady. This was not chaos or a sudden explosion of violence. It was organized, deliberate, and led by a man who already had a history of extreme violence. Brady was serving time for shooting a state trooper when he decided prison rules no longer applied to him. Working in the prison sewing plant, he helped turn everyday tools into weapons, handing out hammers and scissors to other inmates. When the attack began, it was swift and savage. Brady personally took part, later describing one beating in court as being like busting concrete. That was how he spoke about a human life. Correctional officers Justin Smith, Veronica Darden, Wendy Hardy, and maintenance worker Jeffrey Howe were all killed in the attack. These were people doing their jobs, showing up to work, expecting to go home. Instead, they were overwhelmed by inmates who saw them as obstacles, not people. The escape failed. Barbed wire stopped the group cold, leaving Brady injured, bloody, and crying not from regret, but from his own wounds. During the 2019 trial, prosecutors painted him as the clear leader, a man driven by anger and entitlement. Brady testified himself, admitting details with chilling honesty but zero remorse, saying he was there to tell the truth, whether it helps or hurts. The jury did not hesitate. In just a few hours, they convicted him on 4 counts of murder and recommended death. The judge imposed the sentence in October 2019. Brady showed no emotion then either. As of 2026, he sits in federal supermax prison for safety reasons. North Carolina has not executed anyone since 2006, but his sentence stands. His plan collapsed, his freedom vanished, and 4 families were forever changed. The unsettling part is not that the system stopped him, it's how little he seemed to care that it